This is my iPhone and it takes some pretty amazing photos. The images look sharp, good low light performance, and it fits in my pocket. But there's just one problem. The photos are quite forgettable. So I'm 25 years old and a lot of photos I remember growing up were all taken on very early digital cameras. And looking back at those childhood photos, they're always quite nostalgic. And I'm not sure what causes this. Is it the imperfections in the photographs, the noisy images? Who knows? So that's why I've come here to a beach in Cornwall to find out. To find out why this image taken on a 20-year-old digital camera, to me anyway, is more visually appealing than this image here taken on a 2024 iPhone 16. So as expected, there are actually quite a lot of differences between a 20-year-old digital camera and the camera sensor in my modern iPhone, but I've narrowed it down to two main differences. The first being image processing. So these old 20-year-old cameras had barely any image processing compared to all this HDR filters and sharpening that's applied to iPhone photos. And even though the advanced image processing done to photographs taken on the iPhone does technically make the image better, it also makes the images less natural, less true to life. The second main difference between old and new cameras is the sensor technology. So early digital cameras used a sensor technology called CCD, whereas newer cameras use a CMOS sensor. There are a lot of advantages to a CMOS sensor. It uses less power, it has a faster read speed, so you're able to do high frame rate video with it. But I personally feel like, and I've heard a lot of other people on the internet say this, that CCD sensors have an almost film-like quality to them. So I did actually go and buy an old digital camera with a CCD sensor. Here's the eBay listing. Bruh. So I paid about £40 for the Olympus C-5060, which is a fairly high-end digital camera from around 2003. So this camera should do the trick. And here it is. We have ourselves what looks like a third-party Olympus charger with two batteries. That's pretty good for a camera from 2003 to have rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. So hopefully they still hold charge. The most important part, the actual camera itself. This thing's actually really cool looking. I mean, this thing feels solid. Even though it's 22 years old, it looks to be in pretty good condition. So as I mentioned, this is the Olympus C-5060, which is a camera from 2003. This has a CCD sensor, a non-removable lens, an articulating LCD screen on the back, which is very ahead of its time. The CCD sensor is 5.1 megapixels, and something really cool that I've noticed is that it has a little screen on the top as well. Let's take a quick look around this camera. So on the front, we have the lens with a lens cap. This has 4 times optical zoom and it's non-removable. Also got what looks like a microphone hole. On the top, we have that small screen, a hot shoe, a zoom rocker, and a mode selector. On the back, we have that articulating screen. Very cool feature. A non-digital viewfinder, as well as this scrolling dial, some buttons. On the side of the camera, we have 2 rubber flaps, one for DC power and the other for USB and AV out. There's also a button to adjust the flash and exposure, as well as some autofocus adjustment buttons. Over on the other side of the camera, we have a flap. Inside this flap, you may be thinking, SD card? No, this is before SD card. Got a little button you can press and it ejects a compact flash card. I've not seen one of these in ages. Yeah, compact flash is a very interesting storage card. So I actually had to go out of my way and pick up this compact flash card reader to actually be able to transfer files onto my computer. And surprisingly, this is 2 GB, which should be more than enough for a camera that only produces 5 megapixel images. Guess it's time for the moment of truth. We're going to put the compact flash card back in the camera. We need to see if it actually turns on. Oh, that was satisfying. The thing is rugged. You see, things were made different back in 2003. So the power button is this switch here. Oh, it's making noise. I mean, that looks to be working. It says we've got 306 photos left. I mean, ergonomically, this thing's very comfortable to hold. It feels solid. Nice rubber grip. Let's see if the zoom works. So it does have this zoom rocker. It does appear to be zooming in, which is cool. This has a 1/1.8 inch sensor, which isn't massive, but it's fairly typical for a camera of this size. So annoyingly, it is actually very windy today. There's been a storm and there's a lot of seaweed that's washed up, but it should make for some good photos. So I've got the iPhone and the Olympus. I'm gonna go around and try and take some photos and compare the image vibes. I guess that's what I'm comparing, because I know the iPhone is gonna have better quality images, but it's more about the vibe. That's what I'm trying to test out. But even before I start shooting photos, I just want to say that using a camera like this, it's more of an occasion. You have to charge the batteries, put an SD card in it. It's very intentional, whereas an iPhone, you just have it in your pocket and you just whip it out and take photos. It's less of an occasion. To some people that might be a positive, but I'm quite liking this Olympus. One thing I have noticed taking photos with both these cameras is the fact that when you take a photo on an iPhone, you can straight away view that photo. But even though this Olympus has an LCD screen, it's like less than 2 inches and you can't really see the photo that you've taken. So it's a mystery. And I actually quite like that. So you go around taking photos, but you don't really know what the photos look like until you go home and upload them to your computer. It means that all the photos that I've taken today, I have no idea whether or not they're exposed or in focus. I'm just sort of pressing the shutter button and hoping for the best. The battery life has actually been surprisingly good. I've been taking photos for about an hour and it's still got 3 bars, which is, according to this camera, a full battery. Shooting outside with this Olympus, that tiny little screen at the top is actually really useful. Because of how small and dim the LCD screen is on the back, it's actually quite a lot less windy down here. But anyway, before we carry on, I just want to say, if you are enjoying, consider hitting that subscribe button. We're on the road to 12,000 subscribers, and drop us a like. So what we're going to do now is go back home, get the photos onto my computer, and we're going to compare them. Let's get out of here. So I've transferred the photos from my iPhone and the Olympus onto my computer. So we're now going to have a look through them. So I've lined the similar photos up in this folder, and we're going to take a look and decide which ones we'd prefer and which ones give off the best vibes. So the first shot we have here is of the seaweedy beach. On the left hand side we have the photo from the Olympus, on the right hand side we have the iPhone photo. There are some pretty obvious differences. So straight off, the iPhone's photo is a lot brighter, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the iPhone's image. It's probably the one that most people would pick as the better image. Now if we take a look at the image from the Olympus, it's doing something quite interesting. So obviously this doesn't have the processing power to apply a HDR filter, bring up the shadows like the iPhone's doing. So what it's done is it's exposing for the sky. So there's a lot of detail in the sky, but the trade-off is that the seaweed and beach is slightly underexposed. Now if we zoom into some shadows in the rocks on both the iPhone and the Olympus, obviously the iPhone is higher megapixel count, so there's going to be more detail, but you are losing some detail in the shadows because the whole of the beach is slightly underexposed. So we've established that the iPhone produces a more technically impressive image, but if I just look at both these images, I would say that the Olympus, the image from the Olympus, represents what I was seeing with my eyes a bit better. Interesting, because a camera is for sort of preserving memories, and I'm getting more sort of accurate memories from this camera rather than the iPhone. The iPhone just looks very pleasing, but it wasn't that bright when I was down there, to be honest. In reality, it was actually quite a cloudy day. So we've got a few more images to get through. So again, the iPhone's on the right, the Olympus is on the left. So with the Olympus, I was fully zoomed in with optical zoom. With the iPhone, I switched to the 5x telephoto lens. Now straight away, looking at these images, I think the Olympus looks better. There's just a few things about the iPhone's image that I don't like. The first being the sharpening filter. For some reason there's been a really strong sharpening filter applied, which I don't think it looks very good. Whereas if you have a look at the Olympus, Yes, it's not as detailed, it's lower megapixel, but the image just looks creamier. If we just zoom out and look at the whole of the image, the Olympus, to me anyway, just looks better. Like, there's no sharpening filter applied, it looks creamier. It represents what I was seeing with my eyes better. I think that's definitely a theme with the iPhone. It just puts a really aggressive sharpening filter on a lot of the photos, especially with the telephoto lens, and I just think it looks a bit crap. I would be interested in your opinion, so let me know in the comments below which image you prefer. I'm going to zoom in just to have a look at detail. But actually, to be honest, if we have a look at this rock in the distance, I would still go with the Olympus. I think there's just too much sharpening going on, especially with the waves. Even though the iPhone's higher resolution, there's nothing on the iPhone image that isn't on the Olympus image. Like, you can see that bird on both images. It's like, anyway, I'll stop ranting, let's move on. Here we've got an image of the beach with a lot of seaweed. These images actually look fairly similar. I am still going to say I do actually prefer the Olympus image here. It's a bit more sort of toned down. For the iPhone image, it just looks like they've taken the Olympus image, cranked up the brightness and added a sharpening filter. This next image is an interesting one. It's actually the first time I've looked at these two images and been like, yeah, the iPhone's is definitely the better image. This was a very challenging scene. We were shooting towards the sun. With the Olympus, it's exposed the sky, but the whole of the beach is very underexposed and it's lost loads of detail. Whereas with the iPhone's image, the image processing is actually very impressive. It's managed to bring out a lot of detail in the rocks as well as keeping the sky perfectly exposed. Yeah, definitely a more pleasing image from the iPhone here. These next two images, I tried taking selfies. It's actually pretty easy with this Olympus because it's got an articulating screen. You're able to see yourself when you're taking the photos, so it's actually a pretty good selfie camera. This is another example where I prefer the iPhone image. It's managed to expose my face properly as well as the background. I think the Olympus struggled here. The whole image is quite underexposed. It's also the skin tones. The skin tones on the iPhone are quite pleasing, whereas there's more of like a greenish tint on the Olympus. But saying that, these are the sort of skin tones that I associate with images from the early 2000s, so maybe it's a little bit more nostalgic. But this next selfie photo, I decided to turn the flash on the Olympus because a lot of early 2000s photos utilise the flash just because sort of the low light performance of a camera like this is pretty terrible compared to an iPhone. So here's the iPhone image, just a very well exposed selfie. And here's a similar image taken with the Olympus with a flash. I think this is a scenario where both cameras produce pretty decent looking images, but they have a different vibe to them. The iPhone didn't even need a flash to produce a well exposed image with a lot of detail, whereas now that we've used the flash on this Olympus, it's managing to expose the face properly. And I think the image just has a very different feel to it. In this scene, both cameras performed fairly well. The Olympus produces a more natural looking image, whereas the iPhone has that more aggressive sharpening and HDR filter. So here's another telephoto image. Similar story to the last one. The iPhone, especially with the telephoto lens, just looks horribly sharpened. They honestly didn't need to use that much sharpening. Whereas yeah, I prefer the Olympus actually in this one. And finally, I tried taking a macro shot of the barnacles and the seaweed. The iPhone produced a really nice sharp image. Unfortunately, the Olympus actually struggled to focus. But that's more to do with the lens hardware. This actually has a dedicated macro mode. Actually, saying that, this does have a macro mode. Yeah, it does actually have a macro mode. I forgot that it had a macro mode, so that may have produced a better image if I'd used it, but who knows. So that's going to wrap up this video comparing an early 2000s camera with a CCD sensor to an iPhone. In my opinion, I'm going to be very safe and non-controversial. I think they both have their place. Obviously the iPhone produces technically better images with a higher resolution, better low light performance, better dynamic range, and it's in your pocket and it has like 200 gigabyte of storage, so you can just take loads of photos and videos. So on paper this should win, but there's something special about this early 2000s camera. The fact that you have to make an effort to charge it, put an SD card in, intentionally sort of look through the viewfinder, take a photo, it's more of an event. I mean, that can be said for any dedicated camera like the one I'm recording this video on now, but I quite like the fact that this is like 22 years old and it feels solid. It's just a nice camera to use. And yes, the images are less consistent, but occasionally you can produce some very pleasing images with this camera. So yeah, let me know what your opinion is in the comment section below, and if you have enjoyed, hit that subscribe button. I don't know, I'm doing a like button as well, and I'll see everyone in my next video.